Good morning, everyone. Pam Jacobson here, your host of Three Things You Need to Know. Welcome. If you're new and just joining for the first time, I have put in the chat area all of my contact information. You can find out more about me, my credentials, my experience in healthcare on my website. For those of you just joining, this is week 9 of a series that we've been doing for resilience, right? How to become more resilient in the crazy time that we're all in when it comes to protecting our health. So this is week 9. So you'll want to make sure you go back to the beginning when you can and get the early information. But essentially today we are going to be talking about, we're sort of in the phase of the Resilient series where we're taking the original information and we're shifting now over to commitment to the work that it will take to really optimize our health and become more resilient. So last week we discussed 4 tools that you could use in each of the 4 key sort of resilience pillar areas that I talked about in the earlier phases of this series. And today I'm going to talk about how would you know that you are becoming resilient? How do you know that you're actually moving the needle toward the goals that you have in each of those 4 key areas? So quickly, just to review, the 4 primary areas are sleep optimization, stress response management, exercise, and nutrition. So these form sort of the keystone or the 4 pillars of our resilient health foundation. And sleep being the most important, as I've talked about extensively throughout this program. Without that keystone being optimized, you will struggle at best to ever be successful with optimizing your health. And the reason is because the only time that the physical body is able to heal and to repair itself is during sleep. And it's not just the number of hours of sleep, but the quality of sleep. So how do you know if you're improving? Well, number one, because you feel better, right? You are falling asleep easily. You're obviously staying asleep and not waking frequently. And you feel pretty rested in the morning and your energy stays stable throughout the day. So that's one of the sort of obvious ways that you're going to know that you're progressing towards your goal. But if you're like me, I'm kind of a hacker. I want to know, I want the numbers, I want the data. And I'm a really big proponent of tracking and measuring. I think that when you get the objective information in front of you, it's hard to deny. It is hard to pretend any longer that, oh, I think I'm doing okay. I'm pretty sure I feel better. We're pretty good at convincing ourselves of anything that we want to believe. So I think it's important to have objective measurement. So when it comes to sleep, there are a ton of apps and devices and all kinds of things now to track just about every, possible scenario. But there's a couple that kind of come to the top. And so I was going to talk about, now this is different. Last week I talked about tools to help you do the thing. This week I'm talking about tools, apps, devices that will help you track and measure your success in doing the thing. So when it comes to sleep, I think apps wise, the one that comes to the surface most frequently is Sleep Cycle, right? If you look at the different companies that rate apps, Sleep Cycle is usually one of those that's at the top of the list. One of my mentors and someone that I respect a great deal, Tom Ferry, uses the Sleep Cycle app along with other things. He also wears an Oura ring. There's lots of other ways to measure sleep performance. I think the shortcomings perhaps of some of the sleep apps is that they're not attached to your body while you're sleeping and not actually on you monitoring things like your heart rate variability and your body temperature and your heart rate and things like that. So there are some shortcomings, but there, what we're looking at in any of these devices and apps really is a trend over time. But Sleep Cycle is one of those that's touted as being one of the best apps out there for monitoring and giving you feedback on sleep performance. So again, sleep is not just about having 8 hours in bed. It's really about the quality. So we want to find something that can give us feedback on the stages of sleep, particularly the deeper and the REM types of sleep. Those are very important measures for us in terms of sleep performance. I use a device called a Whoop. I've talked about that before. It's a strap that you wear on your wrist. And you know, the shortcoming of that is you have to wear it all the time, and you wear it to bed. But it's attached to you. It's monitoring heart rate. It can tell you what your heart rate variability is. And it's pretty accurate at tracking your sleep patterns. I've been using it for a while, and I find it to be correlative to the way that I'm feeling and the way that I perceive the quality of my sleep for that night. So in terms of apps, I think Sleep Cycle is the one that comes to the surface. There are others that work probably similarly, but that one is one that I would recommend. On the device side, I like Whoop. I like the Oura Ring. Fitbit has the ability to track sleep performance. Apple Watch, many of you out there, especially the newer versions of Apple Watch, have got some impressive biometric measurement capability. And so I think if you've got an Apple Watch, again, but these are devices that you have to have on your person while you're sleeping. So if that is a challenge for you, then you may want to consider using one of the sleep tracking apps like Sleep Cycle. So for sleep, I really think that tracking and measuring is important because our perceptions don't necessarily always match the reality. You know, there's many nights that I went to bed with a plan to be in bed for 8 hours, but my sleep performance was low because I maybe ate too close to bedtime, or I had maybe alcohol. I have been able to determine that even just a little bit of alcohol at night before bed really impacts my sleep performance. And I've had that validated by a sleep researcher recently in a conversation I had. I'm going to be interviewing her on the show in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. But, you know, she said that in her research, one of the things I asked, you know, what are some of the key things that you see really impacting sleep performance? Alcohol was one of those, eating too close to bedtime. Of course, stress. You know, anytime I've had, my dog passed away recently, which was a very sad time for me. And I noticed that my sleep performance was really impacted for a good several days after that. And so there's lots of different things, lack of hydration, you know, lack of exercise, many things that can affect your sleep performance. So again, I think unless you're tracking and measuring and you're starting to correlate the numbers that you're seeing to the things that you might be doing or not doing before bed, I notice that my sleep performance goes up if I do a meditation at night. It goes up if I turn my electronics off. So all of that sleep hygiene stuff I talked about earlier really shows you when you track your sleep how positive an impact that can have. So I cannot stress enough, guys, the importance of tracking and measuring your progress toward your health optimization goals. If you're not doing it, chances are that you are not going to have success in reaching your, you know, your performance goals that you're after. So for sleep, again, the app Sleep Cycle, I think, is probably, in terms of apps, maybe at the top of the heap. Doesn't mean that there aren't others. Check them out. And then devices, there's quite a few on the market that I think do a reasonable job. Fitbit, Apple Watch, Whoop, Oura Ring. And they all have different business models. So depending on what your finances are, you know, you can find one in there. I'm sure that would work for you. So moving on, the second keystone. Now these keystone, even though they're 4 pillars, so you would think they were equal, the reality is sleep is the most important, because if we don't get that kind of straightened out, you're going to have a hard time with all of the rest of them. So the second is stress response management. And I think now more than ever, it's so critical that we have a regimen, a routine, a daily process in place to manage our response to stress, because the stress is tremendous for all of us, just from a global perspective, not even accounting for your own personal daily stresses, right? Your own financial issues, or your own relationship issues, or your own, you know, career related issues, your personal stress. But now we have weighing down upon us the pandemic environment we live in, the political environment, the civil unrest environment, the planetary, you know, ecological stress. So much is weighing on every human on the planet, that unless we have a regimen in place to help us manage the impact of all of that on our physiology, we're going to end up in tremendous states of illness. And I personally, my prediction is that as this pandemic maybe wanes and, you know, recedes into the background, we are going to see an uprising of a lot of disease states from the stress that these things have brought on to us over the last several months now. So very important. Stress response management. I talked already about, what to do in regimens. I'm going to talk today about how to track and measure it. I think I've been talking the last few weeks about heart rate variability, and I'm going to stay on that thread because I have looked at so much research considering heart rate variability, and it is probably the number one most accurate and important thing to look at when we are trying to track and measure our response to stress. So as I've said in previous programs, heart rate variability, just the very simple explanation is it's the difference or the variability in your heart rate, right? How fast or how slow it goes, how much time in between beats. Many of us think that our heart rate just beats at a steady level, and actually it should not do that. It's not healthy for that to happen because your autonomic nervous system is in the primitive aspect of that system is constantly feeding information to the heart in terms of whether it should slow down because it's relaxation, rest, digest mode, which we call parasympathetic, or it is in stress response and it needs to speed up. And what we see is basically a volleying all day long between these two parts of our nervous system, depending on what we're doing, right? Depending on what's going on. And it can be something as simple as just a thought that changes that input. And so heart rate variability is something that's very easy to measure. It's extremely well understood in terms of what those data points give back to us for physical performance, for stress response management. And so I think that it's a really easy and rather critical measure for us to be using to track and measure our progress toward optimizing our response to stress. I've talked about HeartMath Institute's program Inner Balance, and it is a tool that I talked about last week because it is a heart rate variability training program that you can use to create a daily routine around stress response management, but it also keeps track of your data and shows you over time how well you're doing at managing and staying within heart rate variability. So I think that that's a really excellent program, but I also like a number of the devices on the market that are measuring your heart rate variability. One in particular is an app that is called Elite HRV, and it's a free app, and it pairs with a chest strap. And there's lots of chest straps out there. Many of you who are doing performance types of exercise will have a chest strap. It's the most accurate way probably to monitor heart rate variability. And it pairs with a chest strap, and you can run a heart rate variability test on yourself at any point. There are other devices like the Whoop strap, for instance, which doesn't give me the ability to say right now I want to know what my heart rate variability is, but it does check heart rate variability during your last deep phase of sleep. And so it gives you over time the ability to track how your heart rate variability is measuring up to others that are in your performance category and your age category. And so that's helpful. Garmin devices, Fitbit, Apple Watch, all of these devices have the ability to give you feedback on heart rate variability. And what you're looking for when heart rate variability is low, then that means that you're more in stress response. And when heart rate variability is high, meaning longer stages between the beat, then you are more in relaxation response. And what we want is that higher heart rate variability. And the reality is, again, just like with sleep, there's many things that feed into heart rate variability. And most of them are lifestyle factors, guys. I mean, these are things that you have control over. Your sleep optimization is probably one of the most important factors for heart rate variability, the ability for the body to repair and recover. Hydration. For me, I've been able to track my differences in heart rate variability to some specific things: alcohol consumption before bed, but also lack of proper hydration. So when I get too dehydrated, my heart rate variability, because when you hydrate, it produces volume, which impacts how the heart functions. We're going to see heart rate variability suffer when we are dehydrated. Certainly stress. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Heart rate variability, a part of that system or part of that measure, it comes from the stress response side of the nervous system. These are, and physical activity, right, is huge. The heart rate variability is one of the top measures that we use in athletic performance as well. So it gives us feedback on whether or not we can train harder or we're overtraining. And so heart rate variability, I can't tell you enough how important of a measure that is, that you be tracking, whether you use an app like Elite HRV or you get some type of a device, or many of you probably already have these devices, Apple Watch, your iPhone. A lot of these have built-in biometrics. So spend a little bit of time before you rush out and buy something and look at what you already have. You may have thought, oh, I'm just wearing this as a watch, but then you find out it can do so much more. So check that out first, especially for you Apple products users. I think Apple's done a reasonably decent job. None of these biometric trackers are probably can be considered medically accurate, so to speak, but it's really the trending over time when we're looking at tracking and measuring. So if I know that my starting place was X, and then I put all of these measures into place to improve my, optimize my health and move toward my goal, then my trend I should see changing. And that's really what we're looking for, is that objective tracking and measuring. Over time, that information tells us that what we're doing is working, right? That's how I found out that when I don't hydrate well, my heart rate variability drops. That when I'm upset, because my dog passed away, that my heart rate variability drops. I've learned a lot personally about the things I do and don't do that lend themselves to a change in my heart rate variability. So can't stress enough the importance of that. But that daily stress response management is critical. I will talk over the next few weeks in much more detail in each one of these 4 categories on, now that we've taken the original information, we've put into place our tools and things that we can use to help us begin to commit to the work. Over the next several weeks, I'm going to talk more specifically about what the work is and interview people who can, further delineate the things that you might be doing to bring these pillars kind of to bear in your daily health optimization efforts. So the third pillar is movement or exercise. I don't tend to not like the word exercise just because it conjures up some negativity for a lot of us, but it's movement of the body. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I've mentioned multiple times the importance of movement. You don't have to look at all very far in the science to see that it is absolutely critical for humans to move their bodies on a daily basis. And in various ways, right? Cardiovascular exercise, strength exercise, as well as flexibility. So I think, for those of you, putting together exercise programs for yourself, don't just get stuck in one lane. It can't all just be cardio or all just weight training or all just yoga. You need to have a combination of approaches for your movement on a daily basis. And here is a field that is just absolutely crammed full of different tools and apps and things that you can use. And again, many of you are already using a device that gives you information on your exercise performance during the day. Apple Watch is probably one of the first wearable biometrics metric trackers that a lot of us had. I know many people post that closing their rings on either their number of steps or their movement during the day. But there's some other really great activity trackers out there that you can use. My personal favorite, again, is the Whoop Strap, but Oura Ring, your Apple Watch, your Fitbits. I also have a Garmin Fenix that I use I actually wear that watch when I exercise because it can track my various types of exercise and my heart rate and my output. But the Whoop Strap, what I like about it is it really gives me the overview of what I've done and lets me know if my performance, my ability to do that for that day. So it tracks my sleep and then gives me a sort of an idea of how much strain can I take on today. Could this be a day where I do a 45-minute Peloton ride in the morning, and then I might do 45 minutes of yoga at night? Or like yesterday, my performance capacity was pretty low because I had not a good night's sleep and just some stress and some other things that showed my performance my recovery was not good. And so the recommendation was for low strain. So I did just a very light restorative yoga. And that made a big difference in my recovery then for the next night. So I think it's important to use these tracking and measuring devices. They're readily available. They're, I think, for the most part, very manageably manageable for most of us financially. And they give us some very objective feedback and data that can help us make the right decisions. So exercise, right? I've seen just as many patients over-exercise and damage themselves as I've seen those that under-exercise and damage themselves. So to know for your own physiology day to day, right? Is today a high strain day or a low strain day? Right. And so I think these devices can help you figure that out. Again, Apple Watch, a lot of you already have that. Your Garmin, your Fitbits are all, devices that are readily available. The other track and measure I like is the Peloton app. Now, it is a do it app. It's a get the work done app. It gives you all kinds of exercises. I use it a lot when I'm traveling. I talked about it last week, but it also has many measurement pieces to it as well. So it can give you data back to show that things are improving in terms of your outputs, and your tracks the number of days that you're exercising and things. So it does give you some objective feedback. Last category is fueling the body, is nutrition. And here's something that I find a huge percentage of the time with my patients. Especially those that are looking to lose weight and feel like they're doing everything that they possibly can. And, the first words out of many of my new patients, right, when I'm doing the initial interview, when I ask about diet, oh, I eat healthy. I have a healthy diet. And the reality is when we start to track what they're eating, they don't actually have a healthy diet. They've got some issues, right? They're consuming too much sugar. The carbs are too high. It's the wrong kinds of fats. Whatever it might be, our perceptions, again, of what we're doing, I would say, including myself, frequently do not match the reality of what we're doing. So it's important, again, to track and measure, especially when it comes to food, guys. Even if you only do it for a couple of weeks, I find that it is some of the most eye-opening data for myself ever. So anytime I start to feel like I'm off track with my health, particularly if I'm picking up a few pounds, I will track my food for, a week or 2 weeks. And it will then bring me back to the realization of what typically for me, I'm beginning to overeat carbs. But for a lot of us, it's, it could be any number of things. So there are a plethora of food tracking devices and apps and things out there. I would say mostly apps. I don't know that there is a device, but MyFitnessPal, I believe, is still free and is probably one of the most robust food databases out there. Like almost every single thing that you could think of that you would eat or buy or restaurant that you might go out to, the data for that is already captured in there. So it's just sort of a select that and it populates your particular profile. Another one that I really like is Stupid Simple Macros. It's my favorite, and that's the one that I use because I find it to be pretty simple. It's pictures of food. You just click on them. But what I love about it is that based on the profile that you set up, what your current weight is, what your goal weight is, what your exercise levels are, that kind of information. It's basic information in the profile. Again, the idea here is not necessarily the extreme accuracy of these programs because they're not individualized to you specifically, but it's your trending. And in Stupid Simple Macros, again, a very big food database in there, but it gives you the ability to create your own foods or your own meals. For instance, I do occasionally now a morning smoothie, and I was able to create that in that food database so that after you put it in the first time, all of the information, then you just have to click on it after that, and it populates all the carbs and the calories and the sugar and the whatever, the different things that we're tracking. What I also like about Stupid Simple Macros is it sets it up like it's a bank. It tells you each day you have this many carbs available, this much protein, this much fat. And every time you select a food that you've eaten, it deducts it from your bank. And so you kind of always know where you're at. And then it has the ability to show you the data over time. So, but the bottom line is that it's very eye-opening to track, to input food. First of all, it's a pain in the butt. I hate doing it, but it is so helpful. And the more I resist it, the more I realize I need to do it. Because when I'm really on my game, I enjoy putting that stuff in because I know that the information I'm going to get back is going to make me feel good and happy. So all I can say is if you don't track, at least for some period of time, the food that you're eating, and nutrition is an issue for you, weight is an issue for you, or maybe you've got a lot of food sensitivities, or all of a sudden your digestion has really become an issue. If you're not tracking your food, you are likely to not be successful. I want to be clear there. You must track and measure in order to be successful, really, in any of these categories. And if we skip any of these keystone pillars, resilience is not going to be an option for us. So track and measure, bottom line, guys. If I didn't mention an app or a device here, I guarantee you, if you just go online and do a basic search, you're going to get all kinds of input. From some institutions, I think that are very trustworthy. There's a great article from Harvard that talks about heart rate variability. They talk about the Elite HRV app in that. So I think you will not have any trouble. I have no financial affiliation with any of the devices or apps or products that I talked about today. So these really are purely either from my research, or a lot of these are my own personal experience. I use all of these devices and apps. And I find that this helps to keep me on track with my health optimization plan. So I've got some questions here. Can I give us the name of the app for track and measure the food we eat, please? It is, there's several. MyFitnessPal is a free app that's been around for a long time. And the nice thing about MyFitnessPal is it allows you to share that data with, your nutrition coach or your trainer or your doctor. You're allowed to add people to your kind of community that can see the information that you're putting in. Like you have an accountability partner and you want them to see what you're eating. You can put that information in. I also like an app called Stupid Simple Macros. And macros are protein, fats, and carbs, your macronutrients. And but there is a cost to that app. I don't know what it is now. I've had mine for a while. But I do like that one. It's kind of a fun app to use, and I just like the way that it's laid out. Those would probably be my top two. But honestly, if you go online and you search, you're going to find a whole bunch more. So I would suggest that you experiment with different ones. A lot of these are free, at least initially, until they get you hooked. And then you have to buy something in order to continue to use it. But it gives you a chance to at least try it out and see if it's something that's going to work for you. You need to find things that you like, that are kind of fun, that resonate with you, that you're going to use. Like anything else, if you buy it and you use it once and then you don't use it again, it's not going to be very helpful. Finally, what I would say about tracking and measuring is I do a summary, if you will, at the end of every single day. So no matter how good I was about my tracking and measuring in my 4 categories throughout my day, at the end of every day, I have a journal. It's just a book with pages, and I have listed there my 4 key areas: sleep, stress response management, exercise, nutrition. And then I have a couple more: reading, spiritual materials and things like that. But the 4 top things are there. And I have to reconcile before I go to bed and close my day. I have to reconcile with myself. Did I make progress in each of these 4 categories? Did I get my hours of sleep? Did I get my stress response management? Did I do my meditation? Did I do my visualization? Did I do my exercise today? And if I didn't, I need to make a statement about why I didn't and what I will do to change that the next time. So this way I have put it in writing. So I'm handwriting this, and I've gotten it out of my head for the night and on paper, where I can now also track and measure my progress and remind myself, oh yeah, that was a day that I didn't manage my time well, and I let my time get away and wasn't able to do my exercise today. So I would say that out of all of this, the journaling piece of it is critical, right? If you're not kind of tabulating, summarizing, reconciling, at some point in the day, I recommend doing it at night because it's a great way to close the day. Then I think that you'll have a hard time being successful. So guys, again, this is about being resilient in a world, especially at a time in the world where it's so critical, and it's 100% your responsibility to create that resilience. We have laid out the information. We have now spent the last couple of weeks talking about ways that you can begin to implement these things in your daily life. over the next several weeks, I'll bring on some professionals that can begin to help us all understand what the actual work is that we need to be doing and how to do it and how to make it work in our lives. But if you have any questions or feedback for me, or you want me to make sure I include something in these coming weeks, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, it's track and measure, track and measure, track and measure. It's the only way that you're going to know that you're moving toward resilience and optimal health. Take care, everyone. 9 a.m. Pacific time every Wednesday right here on YouTube.